What is Geriatric Psychology? By Bradley Wank, Communications 130. Cast away, set aside, left to die. This might not be the case for every individual living in a nursing home today, but for many, this is the sad and harsh reality they are faced with. Often in American culture, we have a tendency, once a family member reaches a certain age, to send them to a long care facility where we expect others who we pay to take care of and to deal with the emotional and physical challenges one might face. If we consider the Benjamin Button effect, and I know it's a Hollywood movie, but if we think about it, it gives us a new perspective on the trajectory of life. In this sense, there comes a point where our minds almost revert back to the interdependence that we experienced as infants and adolescents. And what this tells us, because we all go through the same trajectory, is that at some point we are going to have to rely on other people to take care of us. And of course, this highlights the need for activation and for us as youth, as scholars, to be able to get involved and to help those who can't help themselves. In a nursing home experiment that was conducted by researchers, they looked at how many of their residents received visitors within a 30-day time period. And what they found was that 8% had no visitors, 90% had one visitor in the 30-day time span, and then 30% had more than one visitor. This presentation is going to focus on the 8%, because whether that is a high or low percentage for you, I guarantee that if you empathize and you were part of that 8%, you would not want to be in their shoes. So what is the significance of this? Older adults are now the group with the most global perspective and as a resource to support with the greatest growth rate. With mental health of the elderly population, they will depend on innovative solutions to support the dignity that older adults must maintain. With this, we look at developmental psychology, or we look at the study of humans across the lifespan. Developmental researchers might look at the emotional, the physical, and the intellectual developments among children, adolescents, and adults. A developmental psychologist might wonder how a baby learns to crawl, or they might look at the factors that lead to teenage drug use, or whether or not an adult is expected to have a midlife crisis. We also look at gerontology, which is a study of physical, emotional, social, and psychological changes that older adults experience as they age. They might also look at how society is changing in the US as the elderly population grows, and then they would create and modify policies and programs to assist older adults and families. And what's beautiful about this is that developmental psychology and gerontology are combining each other. They're looking at the study that each field does, and they're realizing that together they can impact more of the population. An institutionalized life. Researchers characterize the institutionalization of an elderly parent as the nadir of life, or a time of intensified isolation and depression experienced by both caregivers and their relatives. There are psychological impacts from this intensified isolation, and these would include loneliness, depression, anxiety, impacts of socioeconomic changes, bereavement, intensified daydreaming or living in the past, and a feeling of being a burden to a family. And studies have shown that this can lead to Alzheimer's and dementia. Physically, this can cause many implications, including increase in blood pressure, heart disease, anxiety, obesity, and then even a weakened immune system. And then there was something that was said by the National Institute of Aging, that loneliness acts as a fertilizer to other diseases. The biology of loneliness can accelerate the plaque buildup in arteries, it can help cancer cells grow and spread, and then it can promote inflammation to the brain. So what are the mental health implications of this? Approximately 15% of adults age 60 and over suffer from a mental disorder. There is a correlation, as we've explained, between physical illness and depression. They often experience intense feelings of bereavement. If we think about it, one of the factors that might lead an elderly person to a nursing home is the loss of a partner. All of a sudden, they're faced with this new challenge of not only dealing with their grief, but they are unable to take care of themselves without the aid of someone else. This can also lead to socioeconomic changes with retirement, especially if there is a loss of a partner or however the situation might work. There's also the idea that some people are prepared for retirement and some people are not. But just because someone is not prepared doesn't mean they don't deserve the best care. And then there's the loss of mobility and independence. And of course, this is just something that does come with old age. And the worst part of this is when there are cases of elderly abuse, especially when there is intensified isolation, because the individual does not have the resources and they don't have anyone to report to. And now that I have everybody feeling kind of sad and low, I want to talk about implementing psychology into elderly care and the good things that are happening, the positive change, the positive resources that are happening every day within this field. Individual therapy sessions are the first way to create change within nursing homes. And what has been found is that when you have that individual session and you can create the bond and that trust between client and therapist, it is so much quicker to get to the core root of the issue. So for instance, some therapists have reported that they've been handling clients that are dealing with 30 years worth of traumatic experience that they have not even identified within themselves. There are also cases of people dealing with grief that they still have not come over, even if it's been 20 years since they've lost their partner. There is also the sense that the everyday anxiety and the everyday depression can build up. And once that trust is established, a therapist can then figure out a treatment plan to get to the solution quicker. And what this does within a nursing home specifically, it can lead to a renewed purpose of life within the client. It can activate self-advocation for personal care. There might be less angry and irritated residents. Emotional changes, of course, would be expected in mood and behavior. Staff trainings, because it does go beyond the scope of individualized sessions. So a psychologist might be able to come in and work with staff to talk to them. People don't realize if you do little changes, if you say this instead of that, or if you smile this way instead of looking down this way, the little things will add up to the psychological impacts. This could also turn out for a greater turnout of group activities and workshops because there are less depressed residents. And then also, this would lead to a decrease in neediness and use of staff time. So what can we do? What can we do if we're not psychologists or gerontologists or medical care facilitators or even nursing home administrators? There are a lot of programs out there, and one of them is the Adopt a Grandparent program, and there are many variations of this. But ultimately what this does is it closes the gap between youth and then elderly population without family. And it all varies. You might be expected to spend 2 hours a week with this person. You might be expected to spend 2 hours a month with this person. It all depends on which program you are in. There are also programs for elderly pen pals. And this is a great program because what this does is it helps keep the mind active with the elderly person. Even if they are unable to physically write a letter or to type on a computer, volunteers within these programs will go around to nursing homes once a month and they will help them, they'll talk with them, and they will write the letter. So beyond staying active, it also gives them a sense of purpose and something to look forward to. Of course, we know that there are weekly and monthly volunteering available at any nursing home. Despite COVID, there are more restrictions. Visit the loved ones that you have. Remind them how important they are. Remind them about how much you love them. And try to activate within them a sense of purpose just by bringing up good memories, talking about things that they accomplished, asking them questions that you've never asked them before. Your time is short, so make sure you get it in while you can. And of course, become an advocate. In conclusion, psychology focuses on whole picture perspective, which means we look at a lot of different angles through a lot of different lenses to figure out how to get to that solution. And this presentation is just one part of what we can do both as individuals and as scholars. Developmental psychology focuses on the lifespan of an individual, which means all life, not just infancy, not just adolescence, but all life. Gerontology is a growing field, and it will continue to grow. So I want you to take a second, everyone, and I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to think of what it was like, or what it might feel like, to enter into high school for the first time. I want you to think of the new challenges you might face. Remember, you're in a new environment with different teachers, unfamiliar classes, classmates, unfamiliar faces. Your physical body at this age is starting to change. Even your senses are changing. You're experiencing new smells, new sights, new sounds. Your mind will have to progress differently. It's going to have to process information from a new standard. And now I ask you, how is this different from an elderly person entering a nursing home? Human life develops all across the board. And we have to remember that just because we are not there doesn't mean somebody else isn't. And just because we aren't now doesn't mean we won't be in the future. Be empathetic and call or visit your loved ones. Thank you very much.